Welcome to the show, folks. It is Friday, and if you've made it that far, congratulations. Made it to the end of the week. This is the next show we're doing here. This half hour, we're going to be breaking down the biggest stories in the news today. We're going to be laughing through the tears and trying to avoid a full-on mental breakdown with everything that's going on. As always, you can follow me on Twitter at TheMaxBurns, follow us on YouTube at Lincoln Square Media, on Substack at Lincoln Square. We have a great show today. I am really excited because the great Democratic strategist and comms pro, Joel Payne, is with us today. You might have seen him tearing up strategy session with me and Joe Trippi earlier this week. If you haven't, go check it out, but wait until after this show. Pay attention to us first. Joel, how you doing?
Max, it's good to be with you. Let's wrap up this week.
So much to get to. Now, for those of you who are watching, I wonder if you can make some sense of this clip.
If you have a community, would you want the sickest person to fucking die who could be very valuable if you could like take care of them? And do you have the resources to take care of them?
Of course you should. We're a rich country.
Exactly.
Do it with libraries. It's no big deal.
This is the problem with
we don't
capitalism.
feel like a community.
This is the reason why people turn on all these billionaires. They turn on them because why do you have so much when people have so little? But it's because it's the game. It's the game that they're playing. And you're playing the game too. You're just not playing it at that level.
Well, I guess Joe Rogan is communist now, Joel, but that's okay because he thinks communism is cool if it gives you health care. What do you make of this?
That was quite the lazy river we were on there with Joe. I feel like I need a cigarette myself.
Yeah.
You know, it's so funny. The feeling that people are feeling, and all people, including working people, this was all not just predictable, but predicted. I mean, we said that this agenda was going to only be good for rich oligarchs, for people who've got a lot of stock options, for people who, frankly, who live in coastal cities, who live in ivory towers, not working people. And unfortunately, that's borne out to be true. I mean, if you're a small business person, if you're a single mom, if you're someone in the middle of the country, frankly, in what they call flyover country, you've been screwed over by this agenda, by this president and by this presidency. And there's no light at the end of the tunnel. I mean, the only light at the end of the tunnel is a train coming at you in the form of higher prices, lower wages, letting AI companies go and pass off your job, letting companies ship off jobs overseas. There's no accountability for that class. So I appreciate that there is some acknowledgement from that part of the political orbit that that's the reality, but it doesn't do us much good now that we're about halfway through this Trump experiment, which has failed.
Well, Joe Rogan, welcome to the woke left, I guess. That is, oddly enough, not one of our big stories of the week, but this one is. If you've been watching these primaries, Mom, the Democrats are fighting again. It would not be an election season without Democrats eventually turning their guns on themselves instead of taking the fight to Republicans. Centrist group Third Way announcing in the New York Times this week that they're going to be dedicating up to $15 million to defeating democratic socialism between now and 2028. And that includes going full bore against Democratic Michigan Senate candidate Dr. Abdul al-Sayed. But it gets even worse, guys. It seems like Democratic leaders are scared of their own voters because now the Washington, D.C. establishment is coming together to try and stop all the enthusiasm for outsider candidates and tell Democrats why they shouldn't be voting for the candidates that they like. Democratic leaders like Chuck Schumer seem to think that this is a fight between the progressive left and the establishment center. But it seems more like a fight between outsiders and the establishment. In other words, shockingly, I think the Democratic establishment may be missing the point entirely. Now, Joel, I want to get your thoughts here. We've had progressives like Abdul al-Sayed in Michigan, Graham Plattner before he dropped out in Maine. New York Mayor Zoran Mamdani just hit 69% approval in New York. But it seems like this is more about outsiders. I mean, James Talarico doing well, Rob Sand doing well, David Jolly in Florida doing well. And no one would really accuse them of being democratic socialists. What's your take?
Yeah, and I'm glad we get a chance to expand on this because we talked a little bit about it with our friend Joe Trippi earlier this week, and we were, processing the results of Wisconsin, and we saw what happened in Minnesota with Peggy Flanagan. We saw what recently happened with Abdul al-Sayed, and so on and so forth. We even saw like John Larson in Connecticut lose to, frankly, a center-left Democrat there in Connecticut. Someone, John Larson, who's been in the House for a long time. So I think that this is like a convergence of like three fights that are all, it's like a traffic jam merging into one lane. You do have a little bit of progressive versus moderate. I think that that's for sure there. That's always there. You have, as you described, insider versus outsider. And then I think you have the fighters versus the people who are compliant. So I think you have those three fights all coming together. And I don't actually think voters are just thinking about like, who's the most progressive person. In some geographies, in some parts of the country, yes, they do want a more progressive treatment to their politics. But in others, they just want someone who's a live body. They want someone who's going to fight. They want someone who is actually going to wage an opposition to Donald Trump and the craziness that they see. The last thing I'll just say about this, Max, is I'm a have a fight Democrat, or I'm a have the fight Democrat, meaning I am the Democrat who thinks it is healthy for the party to be having this fight right now. It's frankly the result of years and decades of maybe fights being swept under the rug of these disagreements within our coalition that we've all been told, hey, let's not make too big of a deal about it because we don't want to give an advantage to the Republicans. I think it's good to have that disagreement now. And I think what's also good and what's also healthy is you see Haley Stevens, who has been freaking awesome since losing to Abdul El-Sayed. She's been as good of a surrogate as you could imagine. I trust that Angie Craig is going to be a really good surrogate for Peggy Flanagan. That is what you want to see. You want to see Democrats have a good spirited fight, let voters figure it out, and then come back together on the other end. And that's simple, and it doesn't require DC groups to drop $15 million to go and disparage people in their coalition. And it doesn't require you siphoning off people in your coalition who you need to win. So have a fight, have a healthy fight, get over it, get back together, and focus on the Republicans in November.
I mean, you're totally right. The Democrats who are losing these elections, in some cases to progressives or outsiders, the ones actually running have been quick to embrace them. They see where their state is and they want to win. It's the outside groups that have really raised a lot of anger among Democratic voters. And the DNC particularly has a credibility problem. Democrats' own voters now, especially in Michigan, say they trust the party leadership even less than they did before this. So why does it seem like the leadership and Chuck Schumer and these corporate-backed groups seem to be doing the exact opposite of what the voters are telling them they want?
Well, two things. Fear. There is a fear of the abyss and the unknown and of trying things. And the people who are in the, let's just call it the establishment for lack of a better term, but the people who are in status quo and power, they are fearful of what's next and of a lack of certainty about what's next. And I think that plays itself out. I also just think that there is this kind of learned like feeling that this era that we're in, this Trump era, it's a fever that's going to break, right? Like, oh, let's let the Trump fever break, and we can go back to business as usual. We can go back to what it was in 2012 or 2013, and we can have Republicans who we can just have good faith disagreements about. Like, no, like they have radicalized those Republicans. There are no moderate Republicans anymore. I very much believe that. You have MAGA Republicans. The entire party is MAGA. By the way, that has radicalized, I think, a lot of institutionalists. Frankly, people like me, Max, I spent my career working in the Senate, working in the House. I'm the type of person who 10 years ago, if you tried to get me to overturn the filibuster, I'd make a spirited case for you to not do it. I'm not there anymore. And there's a lot of people like me who've been radicalized by what's happened on the right. That just has not happened at the levels of like the leadership, the elected leadership of the party. They are pining for a time that's not coming back. So I think it's fear and it's looking for something that's never going to come back.
And you made a great point, I think, on the message as well. I mean, you look at the common thread for Tallarico, David Jolly, even Abigail Spanberger in Virginia, Zoran Mamdani, across ideology, they're talking about economics and how voters have been waiting decades for the faces they know in Washington to get around to making change. Well, those leaders have said, the time isn't right yet, but maybe if you keep voting for us, we'll get around to it. And now those voters are frustrated and they're supporting these candidates. It seems to me more radical and out of touch to be a Democratic elite in Washington who's telling these voters they don't feel what they actually feel.
Max, I can't tell you how many panels I've been on shows like this on television where someone will show me a poll and they'll say, look at what people think about democratic socialists. Look at its under 30% or 25%. And look, I'm not a DSA member. I wouldn't define myself as a socialist, but I would say this. You know what else is a toxic label? Democrat. The Democratic Party label is as toxic, and frankly, the Republican Party label is as toxic as DSA. People are beyond labels. People don't want to be told how to language police what they think. Does saying you think a DSA candidate is good for you and for your geography mean that you like every dumb tweet that they've sent or everything that they've uttered? No. The same way it doesn't. If you voted for Donald Trump, do you necessarily agree with everything he said? Or if you voted for Barack Obama, do you necessarily agree with everything he said? It's a silly standard to hold people to. What my hope is that the folks who are, controlling the coffers of power and controlling the purse strings within the Democratic Party get some religion about this and get smart about the fact of, hey, how do we add? This is a game of addition. This is not a game of subtraction. If you leave this cycle and you leave this political moment with less people feeling comfortable about being in coalition with you, you failed. If DSA people, if people who are even kind of Maha curious are less likely to be open-minded to be with you, that's a failure. You've got to win the 3 and 4 out of 10s as much as the 8 and 9 out of 10s. The people who agree with you 3 or 4 out of 10, you need them just as much as the people who agree with you 90% of the time.
Yep. And speaking of toxicity, we'll stop beating up on Democrats for a minute and jump to the next big theme of the week here. The economy is on the brink, guys. I mean, man, if you thought the economy was bad when we were talking about it last week, you haven't seen the latest numbers. New data out on hiring and the economy shows the Iran war is pushing prices back up for consumers. Growth is slowing so fast that the country is tipping towards a recession. And now the national debt's about to hit $40 trillion, which the banks tell me is bad. It's a different story, too, for black voters. The National Urban League has new numbers showing that black America is already in recession. Homeownership is down to just 43% among black homeowners. That erases all the gains from the Biden administration. Black unemployment is once again rising. But don't tell Donald Trump, because he thinks prices are down and things are going great. Listen to this.
We're doing an unbelievable job. Costs are coming way down. I inherited, they talk about costs. I inherited very, very high costs, and they're all coming down now. The food, the groceries, it's all coming down. We've done a great job. I think we should be given an A+ on the economy, but
an A+. And at the same time Trump was saying that, his friends over at Fox Business were saying this.
Look at real wages after you account for inflation. Everyday Americans' paychecks aren't keeping up with the price increases still. And that's a problem because
prices going up, prices going down. Who knows? Joel, it feels like Democrats have hit the affordability message on the head pretty well. And the response here is for the Republicans to just pretend everything's going great. I mean, how's that going to work in November?
Yeah, I really want to pull apart a couple of points that you're bringing up here. One, you
go for it.
Particular impact on African Americans. And it's funny, I'm joining you from Atlanta. I'm here at the National Association of Black Journalists meeting. Yep. And I can tell you, this is very much on the minds of, the folks who cover African American communities across the country. I was just at a panel where someone talked about the fact that beef was up 14 percentage points in terms of cost, that tomatoes are up almost 30%. And adding to what the Urban League reported, we know that when you look at Doge, that disproportionately impacted Black women in particular. Much of the federal workforce has a disproportionate impact on Black women. So it all told, feels like a direct attack on the economic sovereignty and the economic salience of Black people. And I think it kind of guts this idea that Trump and Republicans were going to put together this working class coalition of people of color beyond their coalition of working class white folks. It's not bearing out. We're talking about Black folks now. Let's talk about the Hispanic population, which beyond those economic impacts hitting them, you look at the targeting of government resources towards a lot of folks from Hispanic and Latino backgrounds with the ICE surge and the ICE operation. So this is a crisis for Republicans in terms of life after Donald Trump. They struck gold in one election in 2024. They're going to spend the next generation trying to convince folks that what they're doing over this first 2 years of Trump's administration that they didn't mean. You are going to see so much backpedaling, and you're going to see so much begging for a second chance from Black and from Hispanic voters, from Republicans, and again, working class folks who were sold a bill of goods and who have been failed by this administration. It's really something.
And John Welch in the comments notes home heating oil up 49% too. But to your point, that is a really fascinating point, because Black men, especially in 2024, were one of the groups Trump outperformed with. And then Republicans redrew a lot of districts, especially in Texas, where he outperformed with Latino voters and Black men, assuming that those voters would stick around for 2026 and 2028. Now it looks like, with all the pain they're under with the economy, those voters are even further toward Democrats now than they were. I mean, what does this mean for the Republican coalition as they try to win these swing seats?
Yeah, and I don't want to nerd out too much, but if you really look at 2024, I think the story often gets told incompletely because, Trump did make gains in terms of ratio of the vote, but like not raw numbers. Really what was able to be accomplished by Trump and Republicans is they were able to hold down the ceiling for Kamala Harris and performance with those folks. So you have less people coming out and they have a higher opportunity to get a higher percentage. They didn't win over more voters or more raw votes. They just kept Democrats from getting those votes, which I actually think is going to be part of the story in 2026 with all voters, because regardless of if Republicans are able to have success with this hate agenda that they're putting forward, that Democrats are too extreme and kind of this like hate strategy, they have such a motivation gap because their voters are so disincentivized to show up. I mean, if you're a Republican voter, they've given you nothing to show up for. The biggest piece of legislation is the big, beautiful bill, which does nothing really for you if you're a working class voter, particularly a working class Republican voter. All it does, again, is it supports the earning class, the wealthy and the well-connected class, the wealthiest 1%. It does nothing for you if you're a working class person. It takes away healthcare. It takes away all these other things from you. So again, to the point, I think Republicans have a crisis on their hands in 2026 and in 2028 and beyond, because it's not just that they've cut themselves off from winning votes. They've also brought down their ceiling, and they've raised the ceiling for Democrats, because you have more people who are going to have a more open mind to what Democrats are saying because they've experienced it now. They're going to experience higher healthcare, higher home heating, higher goods and services costs because of Republican policies.
Yeah, I keep thinking about this, that Trump may actually think the economy is great because for the people he cares about, it is. I mean, if you're a tech billionaire, if you're a crypto goon, you're doing great. But the people who are red state voters, who are, a little further down the income line, are really struggling. And my question to you as a comms guy, as a strategist, is how do Democrats start talking to those voters and make these numbers that can feel a little abstract actually hit home for people?
So look, right now, all Democrats can do is talk, but ultimately you got to deliver. And so when you look at like a Zohran Mamdani in New York City, deliver. What did Zohran do when he immediately got in office? He started delivering on things, started delivering on some of the promises. Yes, he couldn't fulfill every promise, but he started working every day on it. He made a point to talk about it. And he made a point to say, I remember what I said to you on the campaign trail, and here's what I'm doing. And every time he did one of those things, he highlighted it for people. Did you see the story about someone writing into City Hall this week about a pothole being messed up in the city? It was filled by the end of the day. So like this doing active governance and performing like the job of active, positive governance is really important for Democrats. Right now, there are limitations on what Democrats can do because they don't have all the levers of power. So you do have to talk up and rebuild trust around what you will do. But when you get power, if you're Hakeem Jeffries and you get the control of the speakership this fall, if you're Chuck Schumer or whomever might come behind him and you get control of the Senate, you got to deliver. You can't sit back and just blame everything on Trump. And if you can't deliver, you have to put it forward for voters, for the public to understand it's not your fault. You have to get caught trying.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. I mean, Democrats need to step up. And one of the areas that you and I were talking about just before the show where they've been quiet is actually our third big area of the week. ICE behaving badly again. In news that surprises absolutely nobody, Donald Trump's radicalized domestic terrorist group ICE is in the news again, and this time for pointing a gun at the head of a Virginia woman during a traffic stop. Take a look at this clip.
Cordes, you almost ran us over.
I didn't almost
You
run
almost ran us over.
You're
Stop
so
playing.
full of shit.
Stop playing.
You are full of shit.
All right? You're not funny.
You're not funny.
I will arrest you. Keep it up.
I'm a legal citizen.
Keep it up. I don't care.
Oh my goodness.
We have to car lock you up.
Okay. For what?
The one that tried to run us over.
Run you over when? I got recording. I got dash cam. I got dash cam. That's a lie. Y'all fucking full of shit. You're full of shit. I got a dash cam. I never tried to run you over. It don't fucking matter. I ain't scared of y'all.
Now, the Trump administration initially said this didn't happen and claimed the woman tried to ram officers, but her dash cam footage disproved that lie. Now she's suing ICE in federal court. And if that wasn't enough for you, Customs and Border Patrol is about to spend $20 million of your money to buy ICE electric shock gloves. You heard that right. This comes even as concerns have raised about how these electric shock gloves could trigger fatal heart attacks in people. And I'm sure ICE will use these responsibly, right? They'll have great protocols for this. No, I'm just kidding. You're probably going to die. Joel, why does it feel like ICE is absolutely dead set on becoming Bond villains here?
Max, it's hard not to watch that footage and just the fury that I'm filled with. It's like, okay, so a couple of things I noticed. Number one, did you notice when she pointed out that she had dash cam, those cowards all ran away? Did you notice that? As soon as she said that, they all realized that they were got. Cowards.
Yep.
Complete and total cowards. And that's what Donald Trump and Stephen Miller and Republicans have filled ICE with. Cowards. Cowards with low moral standards, no training, and absolutely no hesitation to take people's lives, take their livelihoods, take their futures, take their hopes and their dreams. It's disgusting. And so that's the first thing I noticed was that how cowardly they ran away when they realized that they were caught. And why God help us that more people continue to capture these things on camera, because we know we can't trust anything that comes off of a printed piece of paper from this administration. Anything that they tell you, anything they say, going back to Kristi Noem's leadership of DHS, you can't believe anything. You can't believe anything out of this president, which is why it is such a crisis that this man lies like the rest of us breathe air. I mean, they lie with such ease, you can't believe anything. So that's one. Two, ICE, and I know that there's this larger conversation about, like, should you talk about abolish ICE? How should you discuss it? How should Democrats maneuver around it? I got to be honest, I think the Overton window has moved on that. Now, I am the thing that I always tell people is abolish ICE is cool. Like, yeah, you should get rid of an agency that allows people to walk around with guns, marauding and assaulting our friends and our neighbors and our communities, going into people and picking up their children at line at school, going and assaulting moms with their kids in cars.
Yeah.
But what's next? And I do think Democrats need to tell a full picture of what is your vision of interior immigration enforcement if it's not that. Most people can look at that and say, that doesn't work. That's not it. You have to fill out the picture and tell a fuller story about what is next. But I can't tell you how much fury I'm filled with just watching a video like that and watching what these folks have been licensed to do. And the last thing I'll say to you about this, Max, is, and we were talking about this before, people got to go to jail. You can't, you cannot allow this era, this thing to happen and people not be held accountable. You can't just do the whole, well, polling tells us that people just want to focus on the economy and move on. Hell no. People got to go to jail. You gotta make sure that folks are held accountable. That breaks trust. When people see flagrant violations of the law, they saw it, by the way, with the financial crisis in 2008, right? People have to see people being held accountable. You can't hold the rest of us accountable if you can't hold the people who are obviously breaking the law accountable.
Yeah, I mean, if you're poll testing basic right and wrong, you're in a dark place. I mean, I looked at some of the Virginia state police and local police protocols after this, and you can't just point a gun at someone's head for no reason. I know some police do, but it's clearly laid out in protocols that you can't just point a loaded weapon at a person. And the fact that she said, I'm a U.S. citizen, and his response was, I don't care. It just shows how far above people ICE think they are at the moment.
Can I add one other thing? Do we know?
Yeah, please.
Do we know who killed Alex Preddy and Renee Good? Do we know anything about? Do we know who killed them? Do we know what happened to the individual that's responsible for killing them? Do we know that they're not back on the street? Do we know that they were held accountable for it? The gentleman, Mr. Lorenzo Algado, his name escapes me. I deeply apologize for not having it off the tip of my tongue. But the gentleman up in Maine or the gentleman down in Texas whose lives were lost at the hands of ICE. Do we know anything about those folks? I know we saw reporting that said one of the guys, his ex-wife, said that he was a danger to their family.
Yeah.
And had a restraining order against him. I mean, beyond the daily horrors that they're forcing people in our communities to have to be submitted to, the fact that there is zero accountability inside of ICE right now. So again, the easy answer is get rid of this thing. This thing is gross. It's bizarro world. We got to get it out of. We got to take the guns out of the hands of those people in that administration. Democrats do, when they have power, have a responsibility to tell a broader picture about what the vision is for interior enforcement that's sensible, effective, and humane.
Yeah. And we have a comment here I like from Floofy Unicorn, amazing name, by the way. It says states can charge these murderers now, and they are not doing it. And one of the things that I wanted to ask you about, the Trump administration has now ordered ICE and CBP to not cooperate with local police who are investigating this, essentially saying that local police don't have the authority to investigate this. We've seen a federal judge order ICE to stop traffic stops like this. Trump issued an order telling them to disregard it. I mean, can the government just ignore the courts like this?
I think your commenter is onto something. I think state governments should be holding folks accountable. And if you're in a state that's run by a Republican, you should be beating down the doors of City Hall or the governor's mansion and saying, hey, what are you going to do about this? I don't feel safe in my community. By the way, this ICE surge, the ICE enforcement of the last 2 years, I think it was supposed to make us safe. Does anyone feel safer? Anyone? I don't feel safer. I don't feel like our communities are safer. Is it safe for people in churches and in schools, people in local parks, people minding their business in their communities, feeling like they're under attack and assault? It's crazy. And it completely is at loggerheads with the vision that Donald Trump tries to jam down our throats, is that we need this for law and order and sanity. It is the complete opposite of that. But to your commenter's point, I think state governments have a role here. By the way, even with Trump talking about these broad, large swaths of pardons that he's going to do for anyone who's been like within 100 feet of his administration, still, there are other things on the books that you can enforce against people and against corporations that are violating the law. And if I'm Hakeem Jeffries, if I'm Chuck Schumer, if I'm the 2028 Democrats, every single day, alongside of all the proactive vision I'm talking about, I'm saying, by the way, save your tweets, save your messages, save all of the documents that you're writing down, because we're coming for you. And I think that Democrats have to be like that. They have to operate in that fashion.
And setting aside just the moral outrage of this, Virginia's a purple state. I mean, this was a state that has a lot of House races coming up that will, in large part, determine control of the House. How is this going to play there?
I mean, if you're Jen Kiggins, can you defend that again in that race against Elaine Lauria? No, hell no. There's no way to defend that. So there's this theory that Republicans again are going to be able to get the voting base, particularly their voting base, worked up in this election cycle because of socialism, communism, noun, verb, say an ism. That's not going to work because of the economy, because of the war in Iran, and because of these awful, terrible moments that we're being subjected to at ICE. I mean, if you think about it, Max, and I know people think about what's going to be Trump's Katrina, what's going to be the moment where the bottom completely breaks. There's a Katrina basically every 3 months.
Yeah,
there's one.
It feels like a weekly occurrence at this point.
Like a weekly occurrence, but in terms of getting to the like national zeitgeist, basically like every 6 to 8 weeks, there's a Katrina related to ICE, and it's part of what's holding down Trump's ceiling, and it's going to negatively affect Republicans all across the country.
Well, we're definitely going to keep up on this story, and ICE back in the headlines now. More bad news for Republicans and their runaway government. And with that last big story, we've reached the end of the week. I've been your host, Max Burns. As always, follow me on Twitter at TheMaxBurns. Let me know what you thought of the show. Follow us at Lincoln Square Media on YouTube and Lincoln Square on Substack. Let us know what you think of all the shows. It's been an honor and a pleasure to have Mr. Joel Payne here with us. Joel, how can folks follow you?
Well, you can follow me on Instagram at Joel, Joel, Payne, Payne, said, SAID, kind of like a clever, like, here's what I said. So check me out on Instagram. And then also on Twitter at PAYNEDC.
And thank you for dressing up, man. You really brought some class to the show here. We usually run a looser ship.
I got to look good, but I got to be honest. I got to see if they have that shirt in my size. I like what you're wearing.
When it's this as hot as it is in New York, you got to do what you got to do. All right, friends, that is it for us. But you can find even more videos on the Lincoln Square Media YouTube channel at Lincoln Square Media. And I'll see you right back here next Friday at noon when we'll take another big drink from the political swamp. Until then, remember to thank Donald Trump for your grocery bill.
But our country right now is doing better than it's ever done. You know, when I see polls on the economy, I should have 150%, not 100%.
Well, yeah.
Because we have the greatest. This is the golden age of America. What's being built now in this country has never, ever been built. And we are literally in the golden age of America. And I think people are starting. I actually think people are starting.
We'll see 89 days.
Yikes. Stay safe out there, folks.